how did companies like IBM respond to the findings of their APIs, say their gender classification API, working so poorly on particularly women with darker colored skin?
Yeah, so I see the response to the gender shades research as a tale of three companies. Let's start with IBM. IBM, when I sent the information, and when I sent the information to all of the companies, I didn't tell them who their competitors were. Just that, there were companies they likely had heard of. So it was what I now call a coordinated bias disclosure, which builds on coordinated vulnerability disclosure from InfoSec. And so if you find a vulnerability, instead of making it public to everybody at once, you let the companies know ahead of time. You give them an opportunity to address it. And then when you announce it, if changes have been made, you can also announce those changes. So we did that with all of the companies, but IBM was really the only one that took us up on that offer. So I remember, I think shortly after my 28th birthday. Yeah, going to one of the IBM offices in New York, and then they had one in Boston. So I was literally running their updated algorithm, their model, really, on the Pilot Parliament's benchmark in my Lego clad um, office at MIT. I'm just laughing because they were very much dressed in a IBM way, and then you have grad students all around. But it's not just any grad students; it's grad students at the Media Lab of all places. So I still remember that. So I would say IBM engaged. They said, "Okay, we receive your research. Talk to our teams." They were, I believe, already working on a new model, and so it timed out. The timing came to where I could say, "Hey, there's a different model," and they closed the disparity substantially between the first test and the second test. Change is possible for all the people who are telling me, "Well, the laws of physics, there are limitations, etc." I was like, there are physical limitations. That was not the problem here. It was more of a question of priority. I will say though, after that happened, I then read an Intercept article about IBM having worked with the New York Police Department to provide computer vision tools that allowed them to search for people by their skin color and facial hair, things like that. So essentially, tools for racial profiling. So this was the thing where I'm thinking, up cost of inclusion, right? Because you don't necessarily want to be powering a surveillance state. And so there was that aspect of it. I do have to commend IBM in 2020. They were the first company to say we are no longer going to sell facial recognition to law enforcement. Microsoft followed saying we won't sell it to law enforcement until there are laws. Amazon. So I will say. So that was the tale of IBM. I would say engaged and proactive. Microsoft. Microsoft, I gave them the same opportunity I gave IBM. They slept on it until there was a New York Times feature article. And then we started to hear from Microsoft, right? So Microsoft also took more of the technical route in terms of saying, okay, here we've updated our models, etc. I remember when Microsoft released an update saying that they had changed their models, etc. It was the week I was on, I think, Tech Review 35 under 35. So I uploaded my Tech Review 35 under 35. I have a YouTube of this. It's probably offline, but I like to timestamp these things in case I'm ever questioned. Like, okay, you're right, here it is. Okay, so I upload my 35 under 35. Misgendered. My age is all kinds of off, and it's the day that they released that announcement. And so that's when I started thinking about this car recall analogy. Just because you've announced there's an improvement doesn't mean it's been integrated into the products, or even if there is an improvement doesn't mean it works for all people. So I will say Microsoft did respond, more with the research lens, and then with the public pressure in 2020, also backed away. So those are two companies. Responsive. Then there's Amazon. I think Amazon's an example of what not to do. Amazon, we didn't even test Amazon the first time. Deb Raji decided she wanted to do an internship with me, etc. We figured something out. And so for that internship, we decided to do the gender shade study again, but include two more companies. So we included Clarify and Amazon. I assumed, given that basically the test answers were available and had been available for over a year, these companies would crush it. So I really was just expecting it to be pretty much a blowout. This is not a particularly challenging data set. Easy grader, nice teacher, right? And so I was surprised to see Amazon was where the worst companies were a year prior, even after all of this attention, media, etc. So one, we didn't show anything that was unique to Amazon. We said, like their peers, they also have up gender bias, up skin type bias, and yes, that intersectional bias also there, right? We showed all of that. It was the same story more or less, just with a different company that, given their resources and given that they were selling facial recognition to law enforcement, and there had been petitions to them to stop, I would have thought there would have been a bit more consideration. So Amazon's initial approach was actually to attempt to discredit the research. And I remember I was speaking. This is all in the book. Like we could go way deep into it. So it's that chapter, poet versus Goliath. So you can get all the nitty gritty in there. Long story short, they attempted to discredit the research that ended up not working. And they took the long way round, but eventually it also came to that we will not sell facial recognition to law enforcement until further notice. These company commitments are, I think, a step in the right direction, but we can't rely on self regulation or voluntary commitments for safeguarding the rest of us from AI harms. So I would say the response was mixed. But I will also say the response from other companies and also other entrepreneurs was this development of an AI auditing ecosystem. So you have many more companies that offer services to say, if you want to build trustworthy AI or responsible AI or beneficial AI, it keeps changing, right? But not bad AI. Fill in your not bad version. We can help you test the systems, test your processes, etc.